Wonderful viewers out there, welcome to my channel. This is Dr. Kofi. If today it's your first time watching this video, just go down there and subscribe to my channel. Today I'm talking about the China over Africa. I'm asking the question, is China really taking over Africa? There are a lot of perception out there. There are a lot of propaganda going on that indeed Chinese are taking over Africa. We ask ourselves, is it true that China is taking over Africa? Can China take over Africa? Will China be able to take over Africa? Is it true? What is happening in Africa? I'm going to present to you some of the investments, clean investments that the Chinese are doing in Africa. You know, the Chinese mean business and not to take over Africa. It's impossible for China for Africa. No way, it can never happen. Myself, I've been in China. I've studied in China. I know a lot about China, and I know a lot of things that is going on here in China. The Chinese never intend to take over Africa. They never have in mind to colonize Africa or indirectly make Africa a slave. No way, it can never happen. Now let's talk about the total investment of Chinese in African continent. You know, Chinese total population, according to their last census, is over 1.2 to 1.3 billion. And of late, there hasn't even been a current census in China. So probably the figure could be higher. And the total population of African continent is approximately the same figure. So one would say, why over 1.2 or 3 billion countries decide to go and rule a whole continent or take over a whole continent of the same population. You know, as at 2005 to 2018, China's total FDI or foreign direct investment was about 299 billion US dollars. 299 billion US dollars. That's the total amount of money that Chinese has invested in African continent, right from 2005 to 2018. And as at 2018 or as at early 2019, the government or Beijing promised another 60 billion US dollars to invest in Africa. What has China seen in Africa? Why is China spending so money in Africa? Have we thought of it? Have studied about China's involvement in Africa, rather than make it seem that China want to take over Africa? I always say it's impossible. And they don't have that in mind. They never intend colonizing Africa, or they never intend overtaking Africa. It can never happen. It can, they won't, and they can't take over Africa. Mind you, Africa is not a country. Africa, it's a continent. However, China invested over 299 billion US dollars from 2019 and still had promised over 60 billion US dollars. So if you think Chinese want to take over Africa, that is why they are investing much in Africa. Trust me, you are wrong. I think it's a propaganda somewhere. It's just a fallacy. Maybe some people somewhere are scared of China's involvement in Africa, and for that, hence their propaganda. You and I believe that some years back, this Western world even colonized Africa or colonized some part of Africa. What did we see over there? Africa is in an infrastructure deficit. But today, what do we see? The Chinese are all over in Africa. They are building the bridges, they are building the factories and the companies. And what? So this is what we call, or this is what we say, Chinese are taking over. Some years ago, we saw how people were doing. We saw how people were taking Africa for granted and using Africa's natural resources for granted. Yet we didn't see any infrastructure development. Yet we didn't see any companies. Yet we didn't see any manufacturing activity that went on in Africa. But here today China has come. They intend to invest more in Africa. Must we claim or must we say because China wants to take over Africa, that is why they are investing so much? Really? Okay, now let's go back. Why China is investing in Africa? You know, this 21st century belongs to China. Whether you like it or not, 21st century belongs to China. Chinese are over everywhere. Talking about the Western countries. When you go there, Chinese are all over, their products are all over, their activities are all over, technologies are all over. Even as of now, Chinese are developing 6G. They are developing 6G. Because other countries are still struggling to develop 5G, and they are even fighting Chinese on this 5G development. Yet they have started developing 6G. So are you telling me Chinese want to take over Africa? So let's go back to the question. Can China overtake Africa? Or why is China interested in so much in Africa? But mind you, I told you 21st century belongs to China. So whom does 22nd century belongs to? That's where Chinese are so smart enough and they have discovered that the 22nd century belongs to Africa. Chinese are so smart, they can foresee and they have seen that 22nd century belongs to Africa. And for that matter, they have to do something. That is why, point number one, Chinese are ever or are very much interested in Africa because they believe Africa has great potentials. Africa is going to own the 22nd century. Why am I saying this? Let's go back to statistics of figures. You know, one professor in California State of University, he's by name Dr. Lonny J Avi. According to his research, he made some nice and very interesting statements or issues. He said, 22nd century belongs to Africa. So that is why Chinese have seen this kind of development and they are showing more interest in Africa. Let's take a second powerful signal shows in the demographic arena globe that Africa population is increasing. Africans' populations day in day out is increasing. And according to that professor, Africa population is estimated to a growth for about 4.2 to 4.3 billion. And mind you, Africa has got this and the most potential population across the globe. So now it's on its peak when it comes to development. So these Chinese know and they have seen the positive side of Africa, and for that matter, they would like to affiliate themselves in near future. They have shown a keen interest in investing a lot in Africa. So Chinese believe in Africa, and they believe that the 22nd century belongs to Africa. In terms of AIs, in terms of technologies, in terms of everything, they believe that Africa is growing, Africa is developing, and for that they have to invest over there. And Chinese FDI around or across the globe in Africa is just one of their total foreign direct investment. It's just 1/3. So what even shows China want to take over Africa? It's never here or there. So why do we claim this falsehood that China want to take over Africa? Believe you me, if you are in China and if you speak to some of the local people, or if you speak to some, their target is not about Africa. Their target with Africa. China's target, I don't want to say that they are not in competition with Africa. They don't even colonize in Africa. They can't even colonize Africa. Why? Excuse me to say. Do you think African leaders are so? It will never happen. So in terms of population, China have seen that African population is increasing. And in some years to come, or in some few days, African population is estimated to a growth of 4 billion. So imagine a continent with such a growth of population or of people, how powerful they will be. So every reasonable country would like to such a beautiful continent, but they know what they can get in future. The future belongs to Africa, and the Chinese have said that is why they've started this kind of investment. It's not that they want to take over Africa. No, it's never here or there. Chinese have no intention to take over Africa. Clean intention to invest in Africa and to have their to support their country, because a country with over 1.5 population, they are scared of their future. They are scared of food. So if China leave the demands of its people, it will never happen. But however, they are investing smart and wise enough that they are investing for the future of the Chinese themselves. Because should they invest in Africa, China in future would not lack some basic amenities, because they have invested in other countries, and for that matter, they yield results, and they will bring their results home, and their people will be fed. So those who are spreading the falsehood, China want to take over Africa, it's never here nor there. They are never ready. Because China, as we speak, China is still a developing country. When you move in and around China, you could see there are still places that are underdeveloped. They stretch their hands out there to invest in different countries and bring. So what in terms of population size? China, that is why they are trooping in all over Africa to make investment for their own security reasons. Now let's go back to culture-wise. You know, African as a continent, Africa still holds its culture. There are some countries, there are some continents, as at now that I speak, a culture. Some countries don't even have, but Chinese still holds their cultural values. Chinese are still their culture, and they are promoting their cultural values everywhere they go. So there are similarities between China and Africa as a continent. There are so many African countries that are holding back to their cultural values, and Chinese respect that. So all over Africa, when you go to different countries in Africa, people practice culture in Africa, and Chinese respect that. And for that matter, Chinese believe that in future, when technology takes over Africa, these cultures in most of the African countries would be promoted or can be promoted more, and hence the benefit out of it. Because hey, a lot of people are going to troop in for teaching and other stuffs. So Chinese don't joke with culture. Don't joke with culture. But some Western countries, they don't even have cultural values. They don't even have culture. But Africans and Chinese still have got that. So tell me, is it what you call, or is it what you say that Chinese? It can never happen. Now we're talking about adaptability. You know, Africa is a continent where it's very easy for anybody to adapt. When you are in Africa, it's easy for you to adapt to the system of Africa, because Africa continent is still developing. And investors, people who do something in Africa, can go back to Africa in terms of technologies, invest in terms of infrastructure, invest in terms of agriculture, invest in various sectors of the economy of Africa, and it's very easy for them to adapt. Because the so-called developed world, what do they have to invest there? So Chinese have seen that. They have seen the positive part of Africa. That is why they are in Africa, is to invest more in Africa. And trust me, the huge amount of money doesn't mean they want to take over Africa. No. Africans have got a good economics. They've got good leaders. The leaders are so smart. Africans have got experts. Think through. They've got think tanks. That we're just gonna fold down our arms and let the Chinese take over Africa. No. Chinese mean business and nothing else. And Chinese don't carry themselves that we've come to Africa, or we've come to Ghana, we've come to Zimbabwe, we've come to Zambia. No, they negotiate with our leaders. They go on a negotiation table with our leaders. So nothing to do. We just have to push our leaders. Our leaders have to be a very good negotiators. To be able to help us with a lot of good deals. No way. There's no way over Africa. It will never happen. Never. It can never happen. So in terms of culture-wise, that is what I'm saying. The cultural setting of Africa. Now let's go to of why Chinese are interested in investing in Africa, according to Investor. According to Investopedia, the Chinese see Africa as a fuel of a growing economy. They see Africa as a fuel economy. And China is an emerging market. China is a new emerging market. As well as Africa is also an emerging market. And Chinese have seen that. That is why they want to affiliate them. So Chinese have seen all these major points that I've made mention of. And that is influencing them, their decision of investing in Africa. Chinese have seen Africa as a means, as a way of exporting their product or exporting whatever they have to offer to the continent, and the continent are ready to purchase. So what will you do as a country? Of course, you have to build a relationship with the people, with the government, with the countries, so that you build a very good market. So that is what. Why are we blaming them that China want to take over Africa? It can never happen. Africa, trust me. Africans are not so dumb, excuse me to say. Chinese has got a mission. They know what they want, and what they want is the people. Chinese are invested in agriculture in different countries. Chinese have farms in some part of Africa, and they export the products or the produce to feed the people. So what will you do as a country or as a leader? Of course, you have to invest more into those countries. So there's no way China will take over Africa. It's impossible. It's impossible. Because African markets, it's very huge. And China is now looking for an expansion of their markets, because China is for an expansion of their market. And hence Africa. And indeed, Africans are also doing business with China. So if I am doing, why don't I invest also in your country to enhance a smooth business transactions? So there is no way China want to take over Africa. It's impossible. They can't. They mean business. So all those bloggers, all those media houses, all those researchers, China has a vision of colonizing, or indirectly. It's impossible. It's neither here nor there. It's impossible. It will never happen. It can't happen. China sees a good business sense in Africa. That's another factor why Chinese are going to Africa, or why Chinese are so much money in Africa. It makes sense in terms of, it's a wise decision in terms of business. Because China represents a lot of, or major of, they produce a lot. So it bothers and seeks countries that are willing to do. China don't give loans, China don't give grants, China don't give offer money for specific countries in Africa in exchange for some. Yet other Western countries give grants in exchange for some policies on the people. China is business, win to win and nothing else. They don't political arena. They don't influence you in terms of politics and everything. You deal with your own people. That's how Chinese operate. When Chinese come to your country, that is why when other countries were not interested in Zimbabwe, Chinese were still investing in Zimbabwe. Chinese government was still interested in Zimbabwe. Why? Because Chinese doesn't want to interfere in any other country politics, you know. They only come and do business with you and nothing else. That is why the Chinese government still find it easy to do business with other countries. That some countries has put sanctions on them. Because Chinese don't influence in terms of politics. Of your own policy that you use to rule your people, they don't influence that. What they mean is they mean business and nothing. So what shows Chinese are, or Chinese want to take over Africa? It's not, it's impossible. They can't, because Chinese themselves is still a developing country. Within China, there are a lot of places that are underdeveloped, and they are still struggling to even develop those places. But they are thinking about their people. And Chinese have the oldest. That is why recently they initiated, or they passed out the two-child policy. They cancelled that policy and now enacted a two-child policy that people now can have, you know, at least 2 children, because they can foresee in their future they will be lacking in terms of population, in terms of the youth, and also maybe population-wise in terms of productivity. So they have to look outside. That is why they are interested in some of the African countries. And never think African continent that Chinese are investing. The Chinese has taken all over Asia, investing huge amount of money. Have you forgotten about the One Belt One Road initiative? Have you read about that initiative? Have you read about how that initiative operates? They are thinking about themselves. They are thinking about the future. And the future belongs to Africa. They've seen that and they want to start affiliating themselves now. So that in future, when Africa is at the top level, when the 20th century finally is in the hands of Africa, Chinese had already leveraged themselves. And they are going to find it easy to operate. So they are not there to take over you. If Chinese are invested in Africa and you think you are going to be in debt, you make sure you never you don't put your country in debt. So why the force take over Africa? They can never take over Africa. So in terms of business, that is why Chinese are all over Africa, and that is why they are investing of money in Africa. Because it makes sense since they are an emerging market and the expansion of their market. Yeah, someone will say for no or political motivation. Yes, fine. There could be a political motivation, but in a positive side, because Chinese ruled over their people. Their population is over 1.2 billion, and in future their population might increase. So they need food. They still need technology to survive. So they have to expand their territories, or they have to expand their businesses, so that in future when their people are in need, those dividends that has yielded in different countries can come and support their economy. You can say yes, but in a positive way, not to the extent that they want to take over Africa. No way. So let me wrap up. Chinese are there in Africa in a business to expand their markets. And in a population sense, African population has been estimated to increase to over 4.2 in some few years to come. And remember, growth, when you have the population, when you have the numbers, it improves a lot. It improves markets, technology, and everything. Now the youth in Africa are more knowledgeable, they are learning, they are everywhere in IT, in everything. So everything will be on our side in terms of AI, technology, and everything. So Chinese have seen that. That is why now they just want to leverage, and in future they don't find themselves wanting. In terms of culture-wise, I've told you earlier on, they find themselves more convenient, because Chinese still holds their culture and they still promote their culture, and their culture is fetching them a lot of money, and they still believe Africans, or most of the African countries, still hold and stick to their culture, because Africa has got a beautiful culture in the world. In terms of adaptability, it's easy investor to adapt in Africa, because it's easy to invest in any sectors of the economy of Africa. Very easy. So these are the reasons why Chinese are serious, and they are increasing their FDI all the time. And the Chinese government has still promised over 60 billion US dollars to invest in Africa. As such, the $299 billion that has already been invested on the continent from 2005 to 2018. Do you think they are throwing the money away? No. They are investing in the oil sectors, the mining sectors, agricultural sectors, the infrastructure sectors. And they get their dividends, or they get their share of it. That's all. So African leaders sit on platforms and plead with other foreign investors to come and invest in the country. And here you are, Chinese come and they invest, and you think Chinese are taking over Africa? Have you thought of it? Why our leaders so dumb? We live in other Western countries, deposit our money there in their banks, and sit in our own corners. Excuse me to say, we said a lot of trash about Chinese investment. What are we doing as individuals? Are we investing our money? Whom are we waiting for to invest their money in Africa for us? So it's never here nor there that Chinese want to overtake Africa. I think we have to come again as media houses. China can never take over Africa. The Chinese mean business and nothing else. The Chinese mean business and nothing else. China can never take Africa. Thank you.